So today I'm thinking about how simple this all is, and the way it we need to have like this sort of like infinite curiosity and inquiry, and then at the same time balance it out with simple practice and not getting in our own way. Really, we're just supposed to be noticing, a slight inward direction and then noticing. And with any luck over time, we start doing that all the time, slight inward direction and noticing as we go about our daily business. That's what the Gita teaches us. And it's so hard. It's like it's so simple, and it is so hard to remember to do that. But when we have those moments where we do remember, you get these like kind of epiphanies or even mini samadhis where you kind of get it, your aha moments where you're like, oh, that's it. Nothing else needs to happen. Because when I do this, I see that I've always been attached to this thing. I've always been aware of this thing. And this moment comes from the last moment and the one after at the same time. Like it's all easy breezy, that way. And when we don't remember that, it all seems so challenging, it seems so challenging. We try to figure out what to do next and how to maximize our existence, our time on this planet, and our mind just like runs with it. And so I've always had this kind of practice of reading a little bit every day. And over the years, spiritual texts. And over the years, I go through different phases like everyone where it's like more or less interesting to me, or, more or less ahas, or certain texts were so juicy and now I don't care about them at all, and vice versa. But over the years, you realize like that practice is so powerful because it's really all about that remembrance, and it almost doesn't matter what the text is. It's like what's inspiring you at the moment is interesting, but it's really the practice of remembering. And I think we could all use like reminders of that, of how these like small habits, turn into like life-changing kind of profound things. And the more you do it, the less sometimes you're aware of how useful your practices are, because they, like everything else, just become the fabric of your life. Like I personally don't remember not doing yoga. I have a storyline around it, but I do not remember it. It's been too long. Like the brain I have now is not the same. The mind I have now is not the same mind. So, but I did have the experience personally of like taking a lot of time off asana and coming back to it. And it was great. It was so great to like experience it again. Like I hadn't done it in a little while. It's like really pleasant and really interesting. And sort of fascinating. And it reminded me of how much it had done for me, and I think it's like that with all things, where you kind of come in and out of interest in something. But the daily reading has stayed with me from the day I started it. And I think it's because I intuitively know that my mind is going to think about other things unless I feed it. Just a little bit. It's like, it's like anything you have to feed, including your body. You got to give it the right nourishment. So that's what I was thinking about today. It's all so easy, yet we still have to set ourselves up for success, right? And keep our interest and curiosity alive, sort of tend that flame a little bit. And I don't know about you, I've known a lot of people that have quit spiritual practices over the years. It's interesting to talk to them because they generally feel some sort of loss around it, even if they don't want to do that thing again. Yeah, I mean, sometimes reading too much, where you're trying to where you're grasping, because the kind of the art of being with spiritual texts is actually understanding them, and it's not the same as like a self-help writer, who's trying to take you on a journey with them so that you think about things and process them in that way. The kind of all these texts, especially the ones that are in sutras, are there for contemplation. So, we don't really read a lot of them at a time. So times for what feels like progression, and times for just being with your practice. Learning new things sometimes shakes us up in a good way. But you can't be doing that all the time. I mean, at an absolute level, there's a couple of things. One is it's a desire, right? It's a desire set. So the teachings on desire say, follow your desires to their roots. Don't get caught up in the small desire that you're looking at right now. So, like for instance, the desire for there to be no war, right? Even that is a small desire from a yoga point of view. That's not what you truly desire in your heart of hearts. You wish for that, but what all the teachings say is you really got to follow that all the way back, because the not getting your desire is the thing that's bothering you, and that's where why we can't stand people, because they're not behaving the way we want them to behave. And there's no difference from a spiritual point of view in how Putin is behaving, and how your partner is behaving, and how your kids are behaving, and how it's all the same. It's like you want people to be different than they are. I say you, I mean we. We want things to be different, and we are not getting that satisfaction. And the reason I say it's the yogi way is because as you get more in touch with the way things could be, the difference becomes starker, right? So one of the things that happens when you go from no yoga to yoga, over a period of time, is you start losing friends, right? Or your tolerance to be around certain people, because now you can see the difference. It's like getting sober. It's like, I'm not going to be around drunk people all day. And then you do yoga, it's like getting sober again. It's like, I'm not going to be around completely unenlightened people all day. And now you're into this weird, incredibly small subset of the population that you're okay with. And then there's another evolution that happens, which is it's okay that all these people are the way they are and I am, because I'm actually not any different than them, because that's the evolution with practice, which is Putin wants the Eastern Donbass, and I want my wife to come home at 5 o'clock and say, you're the most amazing person I've ever seen, and make me dinner. It's like we all want stuff, but that might not be her agenda today, and that sameness is an important part of practice, even though it sounds so ludicrous. You know, it's the same things at play. I will temper the conversation with, and then you have your dharma, which is why you see how I've whittled down practice to just a few things. And your dharma might be trying to prevent, you know, people from getting slaughtered in countries and things like that's its own thing. But in terms of spiritual practice, they're not the same. Actions that you must take because it's part of your role and your dharma is not the same as like the kind of way we need to understand that we are always trying to control everything. And control is one way to look at it. We desire stuff, you know, desires never get fulfilled completely because there's really only one desire, right? So all the little desires, they will never get, it doesn't mean you can't enjoy them and enjoy like the attempt of fulfilling those desires, you know, or be in the moment and ride that kind of wave of your own desire as a way of understanding it. Like the teachings say that too, that you can get basically uber present within your own desires. At its root, you know, yoga's like, look, your mind has an endless desire state, the same way nature is endlessly expanding. It's the same. You're so powerful that you're never going to come to the end. So the day-to-day is you get annoyed, right? You get annoyed with people not under, like you get annoyed. And we get annoyed because we think they don't understand something we understand. The enlightened people are never annoyed. That's the idea. I don't know. I mean, I've never been them, but like these people that sit around, I mean, if you've ever been to an ashram where there's a guru who's like fairly enlightened, or a monk or something that's just like practiced a long time. I mean, people ask them like really annoying, stupid questions, like all the time, every day, you know, and they seem like totally fine with the whole situation. You know, or you or me might be like, oh my God, you know, like I've been in the audience and there's this like person talking to like the head monk, you know, who's like really got a pretty serious grounded presence. And I'm sitting there going like, oh man, you got to check yourself, you know, like you are just like, you are all about you, you know, and like, I'm like super judgy of this person, you know, and of course the monk is like totally fine with them. You know, so then I walk away, you know, and I'm like, oh, right, it's me that's the problem. Got it. It's hard to like kind of wrap your mind around it, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can I be okay with, you know, people that are making it so everything's on fire, you know, like, you know, but then of course I think I know who it is that's making it that way. It's like, it's so complicated. And I don't want to get into like a philosophical discussion about it. It's more just like, you know what you got to do. You need to contribute to global enlightenment and everyone does that on a small scale, really. It's like, look, do you think Putin doesn't have trauma? I mean, look at this guy's actions. Like, clearly, I'm not excusing him. I'm just saying, like, this is the issue. When no one has any more trauma, or when trauma is reduced by 50%, we won't have these problems, right? Like people are all dealing with their samskaras, you know, that's what we know. And it's our job to contribute, you know, not passing our own on, working on ourselves, you know, maybe you're powerful enough to like help a few people around you understand something, you know, in a way that lessens their suffering and hopefully it all works out. But I find myself from practicing so much and for so long, when I say long, I just mean in my life, you know, long to me, seeing horrible things in my newsfeed and being like, yeah, that's horrible. And it's the same. Like I have multiple reactions to every single piece of information now. It's not like it was. You know, it's not tempered, it's just more wide. The work of working on your own samskaras and understanding how that process works so that you can either be different or maybe even pass it along, is really important. They're really things from the past, things that every thought actually creates a samskara. The sutra is like only the one born from meditation, only insight from deeper awareness does not produce any kind of result. It doesn't create a latent impression in your mind. And so even the acknowledging of that is a lot of the work, understanding that we are built also to be present. Like we're built to be connected. And even it doesn't seem like that. But it doesn't seem like that because as a collective, it's not our orientation. So then the work becomes more individual. Like if we could start society from scratch again, we probably wouldn't have this group here going, So, and the other part of that is that you're born with impressions, you're born, right, with a certain sort of like bias in your mind that can only be sort of merged with the truth by some sort of contemplative process. That's what the teachings kind of say. And I see it, I mean, that's a little heady, I see it sort of like negative bias in a sort of realistic way where like, it's not that you have to like always be in a meditative state or something, but if you're going to live at like a 98.7% non-contemplative place, like it's not going to go well. And then that's going to be passed on. So it's our job, in this lifetime, it's your job to sort of clean that up a little bit, because you were just from even the past life perspective, which I think is very useful. Like you were born with a certain set of samskaras that you creates an entire like filter on your mind for how you're seeing everything. And it's not necessarily correct. When we move into samadhi states and contemplative states that are very present, that are very connected, we change. And that's the change. The samskaras gets washed. We're no longer influenced by them. That's what the teachings say. And then, people go all different ways of like sort of talking about this, and then, people go the other way talking about being like, everything is okay. You don't have to actually do anything, but they're saying the same thing. It's like, you don't have to do anything. You're just going to expand and contract and expand and contract. And your latent impressions are going to influence you more and less. But they're kind of saying the same thing because what they're saying is you don't need to do anything except understand this completely by being present, right?